Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of Red Hoop Talk. I'm going to bring to the stage Angeline Boulley. Welcome to the program.
Oh, miigwech, it's my pleasure to be here.
Now, you are a repeat customer of this program.
Yes.
So I feel nervous because now you have somebody to compare me to now. You got Shannon. So I have some big shoes to fill.
That you do, but I have total confidence in you.
Thank you. Well, a lot has happened since you were last on this program. So when you were on, were we at book number 1 and now we're at book number 3?
I think we might have been on book number 2 about repatriation, Native Graves repatriation. I think that was the one that Shannon had been really excited to delve into.
Well, that's some of the work that the association does. So I do a radio program, and next month I want to have her lawyer brain talk about all those reparations, because we just make this assumption that if somebody wins the war or steals it, that it's theirs. So in my adult mind, I never thought that was a possibility to get things back. So
yes.
Okay. Well, we have a new kind of wave of listeners. So do you have an introduction that you want to give to all of us?
I'll just start out with Bonjour, Anin, Angeline Boulley, Misko Makwakwe Nadishnakas, Makwe Dodam, Bawating, and Donjiba, Chimagwech. Hello, everyone. I'm Angeline Boulley. I'm Bear Clan, and I am from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. We call it Bawating, the place of the rapids.
You got that fresh water up there.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Probably explains why your skin's glowing, huh? Now, I noticed I just did a little bit of a deep delve on you, but I want to talk about like your time in education, because when I see the term Indian education, I think educating Indians, but then also educating about Indians. So what was your role in that? And is there a difference?
So no, it's about education for Native children. And it's called Indian because in most of the laws that have been passed regarding Native children education, they use the statutory language of American Indian. And since that was the terminology that was used in the 1970s, when a lot of legislation was passed, we're kind of stuck with those in that statutory language. So, other programs, Administration for Native Americans, there's some other Native language grants that use, the term Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian. But yes, it's to improve public school education for Native American students.
But you don't have, or do you have a role in how public schools learn about us?
There is some. The priority is on improving education outcomes for Native children, but certainly educating all students about Native Americans is very important too.
Well, it's just like we're still using a term that's not ours, Indian.
Right.
To talk about. So I feel like maybe you should just go educate that government real quick first. We'll start there. So when, who, what, where, how? I want to know everything. How did that field start, and why was that kind of where you shot your arrow?
In terms of my career prior to becoming an author, for me, it started out. After college, I went to work for the tribe that was located nearest to where I went to school at Central Michigan University. And that was the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. And I was employed as a student parent advocate. So I was a tribal employee, paid with federal funding, but I had an office at the local intermediate school, and I worked to advocate for seventh and eighth grade students and their families. I was really like a liaison between the tribe, our Native families, and the public school. And really, that was where my eyes were open, because I didn't grow up on my reservation. We visited every summer and spent time with our grandparents and cousins on Sugar Island. But I grew up in a small town downstate, and we were like the only Native family. So I loved school. When I talked about school, I had a generally positive feeling about it. But in the summertime, when we would visit our cousins, they talked differently about school, and I didn't quite understand why, until I was that advocate for Native students in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And I saw how some Native students were just, it was like in the between classrooms or between class periods, students would be in the hallway and there'd be students goofing off, but it always seemed like it would be the one Native student in the group that would get pulled aside. And there was a history teacher who gave me, this was back in the day of like the mimeograph, so it was like the, anyway, weird smelling paper. And he wanted to know if this history quiz was appropriate. He wanted my seal of approval on it for whatever reason, but it was a first person account of the River Raisin massacre. And he had Sharpied out, blacked out it was a first person account from someone who did not like Native Americans. And so all these adjectives describing, the Native Americans that were in this battle were blacked out. And he thought that made that account palatable. And I said, I think what you did is you ended up creating this like racism Mad Lib where students can try to guess what horrible derogatory comment was being said. And, it just seeing different things in the public school, in a school that was, 25, at least 25% Native American, it really opened my eyes to what so many students, including my cousins back home, what they went through. And that school wasn't always a great place for them. And a lot of things made sense. And I decided that's where I really wanted to focus my career, was on, improving public school education for Native students and about Native peoples to the benefit of all students.
I wish I had you when I actually got expelled from high school for taking over history class and writing some truths on the chalkboard. So I got sent to remedial school, the continuation school for the bad kids, even though I was in all honors classes before they expelled me, because I just hit a breaking point on hearing just lies. So education kind of broke me, and it took me a long time to get back into college because I didn't want to be lied to again, right. or have to, like you said, recite a racist Mad Lib to get my grade in the class.
Right.
So I think that's hugely important work, and thank you for that. So
I had great coworkers and great students some of my 7th grade and 8th grade students from that first job I ever had, I'm still, very close with, friends with. And in fact, Melissa Montoya Isaacs, she is the mom of Gimiwan, who is featured in my 3rd book, Sisters in the Wind. Melissa talks about how Gimme started out as her baby cousin, but through ICWA and ceremony, she's now her daughter. And just a beautiful story about why the Indian Child Welfare Act works. Gimme is a perfect example of that. And it just, to me, it just feels so full circle that Melissa was one of my first students that I had in my career. and then that our paths have continued to cross. And, I think that's wonderful.
Were you already a writer or a fan of writing when you were younger and through your education early career?
I was always an excellent reader, and I was good at writing, but I didn't pursue creative writing. I was good, anytime a quiz would be an essay exam, I knew that I would be able to pass it. And then in my career, no matter what title I had, whether it was student parent advocate or tribal education director, I always wrote grants, and I
Mm.
was a very good grant writer. And I realized that grant writing is a specific form of short storytelling, because you're trying to create a compelling narrative of why your community should get this funding that unfortunately we have to compete with other worthy communities. And it's all about creating that compelling narrative for the peer reviewers to score you, a point higher than others. And so I knew that I was a strong writer, but I again didn't try to write a story until I was in my mid-40s.
Well, when did the creative writing bug get you? Because it really seems like we're talking about what, 4 years, 3 books. It's a whirlwind to me, just kind of watching you come on the scene not that long ago and stay on top and just keep giving us more.
Oh, miigwech. So I had the idea for Firekeeper's Daughter when I was a senior in high school. A really great friend of mine lived in a different school and told me about a new boy in all of her classes senior year, and did I want to meet him? And of course I said yes. But then a few weeks later, she's like, no, he doesn't play sports and hangs out with the stoners. And so I was like, all right, I'll take a pass on that. And then a month before graduation, she said that there was a drug bust in their school, and it turned out that the new boy was actually an undercover police officer. And this was right before the original 21 Jump Street. So I had no frame of reference that it was possible for a young looking law enforcement officer to pose as a high school senior as part of an undercover drug investigation. And so I had this, spark of an idea of, what if we had met each other, and what if we liked each other? Or perhaps it wasn't that he liked me, but he needed my help. And then the thought of, well, why would some undercover drug investigation need the help of this ordinary 18-year-old Ojibwe girl? And 35 years later, that became Firekeeper's Daughter. So really, it was just having the spark of an idea for a really great story. And then it took, over 2 decades while I, living my life, getting married, having children, establishing myself in my career. But I would always think about that story. Wow, that would be a really good story. And after 20 so years, it was a long incubation period, really figuring out how I could make that plausible, of why this Ojibwe girl might help this undercover investigation with the FBI. And how I made it plausible is that, she witnesses the murder of her friend, and decides that she's going to run her own investigation parallel with the FBI, and she will decide what information she passes along and what information she keeps, because she realizes that she's not just protecting her tribal community, but she's also protecting Indigenous knowledge. And that really, I felt comfortable telling a story with that perspective. So, just at 44, just realizing, hey, maybe this is the midlife crisis that people talk about. And, if ideally there's an equal amount of sand in the bottom of the hourglass than the top, what am I waiting for? I've been, thinking about this story in one shape or form since I was 18. And so it really just started with one morning getting up a half hour before the kids and writing on the family computer for a half an hour. And that's just how it started. And I did it consistently enough to finish a first draft.
It's, I don't know, that's incredible. And you make it sound so easy. I'm just going to wake up a little bit earlier. But no, it's carving out that time for yourself and for these ideas. But Native history, Native people, modern Native issues, and things, it's so complicated and dense and layered, right? So even you mentioned in the story, helping the FBI. I have a handful of uncles who are like, you don't talk to cops, you don't help cops, you don't, you know what I'm saying? So right there's a dense issue. And then two, are you a narc? Are you now selling yourself, right? So just in one sentence, my brain goes bananas with all these issues. So how do you have to slow down a lot and kind of de-thread the ball of yarn to because I get it, you get it, right? We get it. But explaining it to somebody who doesn't understand being raised with mistrust or having police brutality or all these things, how do you gently explain that to a larger audience?
I think Donna's was a great way to, her story is a great way to introduce young, high school readers to, she's fully aware of how the FBI is perceived on her reservation and, the things that compel her to help while her drawing the line of what she is not going to, not willing to provide to them. It was a fine line. And, but I felt it gave a great example of, for readers who aren't Native. I have this loud cat, and
I know,
so
I have
I
one. I'm
apologize.
abused.
Hey,
I'm
buddy.
bullied. My Patsy screams for faucet water, and she will just scream until. So if you have to give an offering or a blood donation or whatever you got to do to appease the cat at any time, we're okay with that here on Red Hoop Talk.
All right, wonderful.
But no, these really are, and even just me being in media, when you talk about what to give, what not to give, we always run a risk of whatever we put out there just being twisted, distorted, taken out of context, generalized, stereotyped. You mean you're doing a great job. You got 3 books down, but I'm still partially holding my breath. Like how do you know it's okay what you just gave out?
This is why Indigenous stories need to come from Indigenous authors. I feel like I knew when to pull that curtain over the window. So there's the saying about books for children and teens serving as windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. That's by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. And then Dr. Debbie Reese, who runs the American Indians in Children's Literature blog, she has said, the windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors analogy, but has said some of those windows need curtains, and where I pulled the curtain and kept things that I felt should not be shared outside of my community. I got this a DM on Instagram from a reader, and she was from a tribe out in the Southwest, and she said, "Yeah, I read your book, I liked it, but man, you Northern Indians give way too much away." And I thought that's a valid point, in her community, like where I pulled the curtain, that window never even would have been open. It just and I think my mantra is I write to preserve my culture and I edit to protect it. So I write freely, I write whatever I want. And then it's in the editing process, the revision process, that I really think through, should I be telling this? Should I be including this information? And that's where I made the decision that I wouldn't include actual ceremony in the book. But there are other Indigenous authors that feel that if they read about ceremony from 3 separate sources online, they feel it's kind of like open content or open source content. And so every writer has to decide for themselves where to pull the, when to pull the curtain. And I have my cousin Deb is kind of, I have her, like imaginary her whispering in my ear or shouting like, I don't think you should have included that. And I feel like if I can justify, if she asked me about any aspect of my stories, why did I choose to include it? I feel like I need to be able to justify it to her. And, there's that level of accountability to your family and your community of what you share. And that is something that non-Native authors do not have to worry about. That they can do whatever they want with the content that they mine in our communities, and then weave these stories, and they never have to face the consequences of someone being like, coming getting after you for something rightly that maybe you should not have included. So
But it's your life and your experience and your culture. So part of me feels like, yeah, woman, get out there, do what you want. But at the same time, there's this cold. And then you mentioned so I'm struggling with AI because I like that who we are isn't on the internet. I like how these 600 plus nations have their own reasons of A, B, C, D. I like that a lot of who we are, you have to be there for. You can't read about it, watch a movie about it. But at the same time, we have to preserve. We have to this. So how do you kind of feel, especially now, your experience, your books are now part of that machine in a way. So should we be feeding it more of the correct info? I'm just middle-aged and everything makes me angry and confused.
I think that my primary audience is, that Native teen like I was that, couldn't find any stories about themselves in the books we were reading. And so I want people to see themselves in my stories, see their aunties and grandparents in kind of in those characters that I've created. But also, it's kind of like I want to maybe spark that interest, provide some knowledge, but then, leave it open of, here's how you might want to learn more about this, or, opportunities you might have to come, to our tribal community and, go to a powwow or go to a round dance or go to an event where people from the public are welcome, and the information that is shared with the the full idea of this is something that we are okay with sharing. So yeah, you're right. There is no. I always worry that someday, in my latest book, I just wonder if there's going to be someone who takes issue with something that I've written. And again, I feel like if you approach it with a good heart and a good intention, and fully admit if, that just because I'm Ojibwe, it doesn't mean I got everything right about telling this Ojibwe story. And so there's that, that humility that I'm not perfect, and but really trying my best to write stories that are so important for our children and teens to read.
Well, I first saw you, I think, on the news 2021-ish when your first book came out. And I was like so pumped. I was like, yes, get it, woman. And then so just some of the questions from these major news outlets just kind of gave me the ick, like made my heart sink a little bit, because I didn't really feel like your experience and your consistent tie to culture and family and working in the community and helping the community didn't really seem to be honored. It was like, oh, look at this book that you just came up with. when it was like you didn't come up with this, you were living this.
Right.
So I wanted to yell at I did yell at the TV because, again, middle-aged, angry, and confused. So and that's the thing too, honoring your experience that brought you to these words and this perspective. It's not just a story pulled out of the ether. There's a lot of who we are as women, as Indigenous people, as intelligent women and Indigenous people. And again, weaving a lot of those heavy concepts into one book. So I just round of applause you,
Mm.
And so tell me about that first book tour. Because I think you were on like Good Morning America. Like you were on some heavy hitting shows.
I was rocking my Jamie Okuma bodycon dress that, thankfully you could only see from the, chest up. Firekeeper's Daughter debuted 1 year to the date of the pandemic, of the lockdown. And by then, publishing had figured out how to pivot. And so most of my book events for the first 6 months of Firekeepers, the release of it was virtual, including that Good Morning America spot. So I was thrilled and excited for every appearance, but there was that lacking of that in person. But when we did start to do in-person events and we would be masked, if this would happen more, this happened at least a half a dozen times where a Native woman would come up to me in the signing line and she would start to tell me about how much the story meant to her. And, it was just very emotional. And then I wanted her to know, did I get it right? Did I tell our stories? Did I make you proud? And it was almost like this silent conversation that we would have with just our eyes. And I don't know that would have been the same had we not been masked and relied on that connection. Fortunately, when my second book came out, by then we were back to, tours, and I was on a book tour for a good, 2 weeks. And then with my third book, Sisters in the Wind, I was on tour all last week. I have this week off, and then I go back on the road, and I am going back to Good Morning America. They picked Sisters in the Wind for their young adult book pick for September. So I will be on Good Morning America on Thursday, September 18th. And I'll get to be in studio instead of in the virtual, realm. So yes, I'm very excited.
Well, and I feel that this round is well deserved as a thrice over bestseller and not a token dragging you in for Native American Heritage Month because we have to prove we did an Indian, right? Like you're coming in on top because hot damn woman, you've earned it, right?
Yeah.
You are a heavy hitter. That's amazing.
Right. And if I get invited to participate in, literary conferences, if they want me to be on the diversity panel, it's like, no, I don't do diversity 101. We are beyond that. And if that's where your conference is focusing a panel, that ain't it.
It ain't me, babe.
That ain't it. And so I want to be on the panels where we're talking about, sexy mystery thrillers. And, I love Darcy Little Badger, her book Alatsui. Like we get our vampire stories. Same, with Andrea Rogers with her book Man-Made Monsters. Like we get our werewolf stories. We get this. Those are the types of panels where we're like just another author, and the focus is on the writing, the craft, the story, and it's less about and where our diversity isn't the first thing that's talked about. It's secondary to that story, and we're at the table talking about our stories. That's what I love.
Well, and you said it a bit back on not seeing yourself in anything growing up, not having that representation. Um, I I didn't know I could be on the news. I didn't know I could be in radio because growing up, I didn't see anybody like me. So we just make these weird subconscious assumptions that since nobody like me is there, then I guess it's a weird little thing. So why does representation matter?
Because stories can save lives. Children who and teens who feel different from other people, for their identity to be validated in a story. There's an anecdote that Angie Thomas, she is the young adult author who wrote The Hate You Give, which just like revolutionized the young adult canon. And she said when she was a young girl and writing stories, all of her characters were white, that she didn't know she could write a Black character. And then, her debut, The Hate You Give, I mean, it's been on the bestseller lists for, a decade, for several years. And so, groups that have been underrepresented in literature and aren't represented in the publishing houses, it's kind of that group think. If everyone's sitting around the table that's making the decisions whether or not to acquire a book, and then how to do the cover, how to do the editing the story, if everyone is homogenous around that table, you're going to get a lot of filtered content. And so I think that's where we need to talk about diversity, but we need to talk about it in the context of the publishing houses, who's making decisions about our books. Those are the spaces where we need to focus representation there.
But are you feared? Like, I know that, you mentioning Ikwa. Oh no. Are they scared because she's going to say something and it's going to shake up the, normal, boring stuff? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you have to balance how Indian can I be?
Yeah. Well, I want to write characters that are so true to life that, like when I'm in Sault Ste. Marie and I go into a coffee shop or something, I want Donis to feel so real that it's like, oh, you just missed Donis. Oh, she just drove by in her Jeep. Oh, this and that. That's how I want my characters to feel so real. And so, they need flaws. There's nuance there. It cannot be this binary of all Indigenous characters have to be so perfect and good in the stories about them. And, the white characters are automatically the villains, or all the female characters have to be, noble and pious, and the men are the bad actors. It's like, no, let's write more nuanced stories that really do reflect, human beings in all of our, imperfections. So yeah, that's what I want to write.
Well, I think that comes through because you have such a broad fan base, right? So I think that you've nailed it with that, because there's so many other things we can relate to, because not everybody can relate to being an Indian.
Right. But I love it, like when an elderly white man comes up to me at a book event and is like, I know I'm not your target audience, but this was a really great read. And I especially love when a grandma, a parent, and a teen say that they read the book and they had a conversation about it.
I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen any teenagers reading your books. It's all older women. So I was
I
like, oh,
hear from
this is a young
teachers.
adult series. I didn't know that. I thought, because again, I just see all ages reading into it. And I really feel that I think that's your success is that you get that human side. When I do a lot of my radio stuff or storytelling or short documentary work, it's really trying to tap into that human thread, the thing that we all worry about or cry over or think about, or and you nailed it 3 times in a row.
Miigwech.
So I don't want to keep you for you're just so fascinating, because this is a risky thing you've done. Art is risky. Art is vulnerable. Art is expensive. Art takes time, right? And
Right.
so to see you come out so strong and do it so well is it's shooting star. It's just one of those incredible things we don't always get to experience.
I love it. And as long as, there's a microphone at my face and people want to, know other authors that I love, other stories, as long as the spotlight is on me, I want to amplify other Indigenous authors. And, let me get this, plug out for legendary Fry Bread Drive-In. It's a anthology. It's a compilation of short stories from um, established authors like myself, and then there's also authors that this is going to be their first writing that gets published, Native authors, and we're all telling our stories, but we all had to use this legendary Fry Bread Drive-In as the backdrop for our stories. And it's edited by Cynthia Leidick Smith. I love that there are debut authors in that anthology that are getting their shot, and we get to read their stories, and that I love that.
Well, again, we make these weird assumptions as Native people growing up. So because we didn't have a written language, or I didn't, being Choctaw, I feel like we're not really encouraged to write. Like we're going against something culturally by using this colonized tool, right? But we're here now.
Right. I think that survival is adapting. Everything in the world must adapt to survive. And so I think that our use of technology, having my book read by an Indigenous narrator, and people being able to hear the language. And we worked so hard making sure that Isabella Star LeBlanc knew the Anishinaabe Moen pronunciations, but then we forgot about some regional things. So in the first cut of Firekeeper's Daughter, the audiobook, I listened to it, and Isabella's phenomenal. It's her first time narrating, just knocked it out of the park. And then she mispronounced the word pasty, which is a meat pie,
Yeah.
but she pronounced it as pasty, which
is
stripper tassels. And I remember calling my agent and being like, oh, we need to fix this. And my agent was like, okay, Macmillan's willing to ship the recording equipment back out to Isabella. Is it worth it for 5 uses of that word? And I said, you don't understand. My cousins are ruthless. If this doesn't get changed, my nickname for the rest of my life will be Pasty. Hey, buddy. And so, yeah, I think that we, and then Dr. Margaret Noden, she has a website called Ojibwe.net, and they have a page for my books where you can hear the prayers spoken. It's free. It's a free website, and there's resources. So I love that we're using technology. During the pandemic, our Ojibwe, our Anishinaabe Moen courses went online. Northern Michigan University in Michigan offers like tuition free I believe three courses in, introduction to Native American, communities and language and that. So I think that we adapt to survive, and technology is no different. It's like money is neither good nor bad. It amplifies whatever energy is brought to it. And that's the same with technology. It's neither good nor bad. Let's try to use it in the best ways to amplify our voices and to be more inclusive, to draw in people who don't, more Indigenous people live off reservation than on reservation. And so let's provide a way for those citizens to connect back with their community. I loved, during the pandemic, I think there were like virtual round dances and virtual powwows. And to me, it's reaffirming that our ancestors had to adapt to survive. We've had to adapt to survive. And those generations that come after us will too. And so as long as we do so with integrity and good intention, we don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep trying.
Well, like you said, with the good intention, the integrity, you don't want to feel like you're selling out or rush to something. And I really love that, keeping proper pronunciation, keeping language in the story, but not to where the sounds are an assumption or people use it wrong. Like you tried to teach this tool that you're reading. So even if you're not Native, here is I don't know. I think that's really, really beautiful.
And
I come from a paranoid people. Okay.
Yeah.
Civilized tribes. We're not giving you nothing. We're not trying to take nothing. Just leave us alone. Don't kill us. Right. It's a very,
right.
So I love how you're explaining the coming out and the balance. It takes out the fear. You're listening to people for feedback, but they don't own you. Right. Like your cousins have an opinion, but you're not going to be bullied into something that doesn't work for your soul or whatever. So I like that there's thought into it, and you are not the ambassador for all Indigenous people. You're one experience, but we can all relate to that experience.
Yes, definitely. There can be no singular great Native American novel because we are not a singularity. We're not a monolith. And so I always say, whenever I do an event and they do a land acknowledgement, I have mixed feelings about land acknowledgements, because land acknowledgements are often meaningful, but they are rarely impactful. And so I challenge everyone, after I hear a land acknowledgement, I challenge them to seek out a book by a Native author, either request it for free from your library or purchase it, read it. Costs you nothing to rate it and review it online and to share it word of mouth with 5 other people. That is gold to Native creatives. Listen to a Native band, watch a Native director's film, support the creative arts. And let that land acknowledgement be a reminder that we are still here on this land, and these are tangible things that anyone, and in particular allies, could and should be doing.
So I'm so glad you said that, because I had a resource group here in NorCal reach out to me and say, we want a land acknowledgement, but in language. And they're not Native. And I said, no, number one, no, because you're just going to mess it up. And then you're just going to hand it out to all your other park service people to mess it up. And then what does it even mean? Oh, and then why did you contact me? Not the tribe, local tribe. So land acknowledgements to me feel just placated a little bit. And
they're performative. Yeah. And it's like, okay, we acknowledge that we're on this land, and then not acknowledging the reason why the Indigenous people don't own that land anymore. Uh, and so, yeah.
Well, it's like the editing of what you got in class. We're just going to black out all this stuff because we don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable with the truth.
Right. And it's like there are children and people who have lived this truth. So if they can, if people can survive the boarding school, I think non-Native people can survive reading about the boarding school.
That was a 1-2 punch. That was a knockout. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you argue with that? Right? We lived it.
Right.
We can read about it. Well, and it feels like the world has kind of gone mad this year. Somehow being a woman is DEI. How somehow the perspective of the original inhabitants of Turtle Island is a DEI. Somehow, and then there's always the paranoia of silencing the voice. Or are you at risk of your books being pulled out of schools because you mention topics that could make somebody feel uncomfortable somewhere at some point?
Yes. Firekeepers has been banned in some school districts. There was a school district 20 miles away from my hometown. And I was like, when I found out that my book was included in that ban, it was like, wait, we played you in sports. I can drive and show up at your school board meeting and be like, wait, I'm a local author. I've, been a New York Times best-selling author, and my book doesn't get read in the county that I live in. There's something about that. I think that I love when schools and libraries take the handle censoring and soft banning, book bans, all of that, in terms of parents can opt out their child. If a parent wants to provide a list of books they do not want their child to read, and they give it to their local public library and to their school librarian, if hopefully their school has a library and a librarian, of course, that parent has that right. But that parent doesn't have the right to provide a list that keeps my children from reading books that I want them to read. And so I think that's the whole crux of book banning and censorship is parents have every right, but parents don't have a right to they have a right to what their children sees. They don't have a right to dictate what my child can and cannot see.
So I'm a big crier. Okay. I cry when I read. So every time in class growing up, I start sobbing because I'm reading, and then all my classmates made fun of me, Outsiders, Bridge, Terabithia, just all the books. But I felt things, and I learned things, and I learned how to process feelings, and I learned about processing feelings through the people I read about processing feelings. So even though, and that's why I have to have tattoos now, because I was too sensitive in elementary school, but those feelings are human. I'm not the only one crying. Everybody caught up to me and be crying about what, so these things exist. These stories exist. These experiences exist. And we've already been written out of history once. I'll be damned if they start rewriting you and taking you out of our story, because you're part of this American story now with what you've been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it kind of like you're on the band, like, you know what I mean? Like you can wear a leather jacket now with your collar flipped up because your book is banned. They go with that.
Like, I mean, there are people who view it as a badge of courage. But wealthy children have always had access to whatever books they want. Book bans hurt those in underserved communities. Book bans hurt the most vulnerable children and teens. At a time when we know that the power of a story to save someone's life, it's real. Yeah. Book bans hurt authors' royalties, but more importantly, they hurt the children who could have received that story and didn't.
But I relate to my world in so many different ways based on tons of reading as a kid. You know, a lot of John Steinbeck. So I go places around here in California and I'm instantly connected because I remember him explaining the smell of the wind or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I don't feel damaged by any reading I've done. There've been weird books with like weird, sad, or terrible stories, but that's not why I'm insane. Reading is not why I have issues. It's everything else.
Right.
So I can't believe how much you're just so pleasant. I love talking to you. So let's
Same,
move into
same.
the new book. Is it out? Can we get it now? Where do we get it? What's it about? And what kind of uncomfortable topic are you going to get banned on with this book?
Well, okay. My third book is Sisters in the Wind, and it tackles the Indian Child Welfare Act. What happens when our kids, those lost ones that are adopted or fostered out, the ones who find their way home and the ones who don't. And so it follows 18-year-old Lucy Smith, who has aged out of the foster care system in Michigan, and she's on the run. She has seen and done some things that she has, at least one enemy out to get her. And so when this kind, attractive attorney, a Native man named Jamie, offers to help connect her to the Native family that she never knew that she had, then she, as much as she wants to trust him and his friend Donis, she knows that she's being followed and someone's out to get her. And so it's kind of that vulnerability. How do you trust when for the past 5 years your survival has been based on the skills you learned of who not to, who shouldn't be trusted. And you've been shown that time and time again. I think it will be controversial because I go all scorched earth in my author's note. That the part of my research, I read all of the 1974 Senate subcommittee hearings on that led to the passage of the Indian Child Welfare Act in 1978. But I also read all of the amicus briefs that were filed in the U.S. Supreme Court case Holland v. Brackeen, which was decided in 2023. And what the Supreme Court ruled, they upheld a lower court ruling that held that ICWA is constitutional. But Justices Thomas and Alito, they each wrote a dissent position, and they basically left breadcrumbs of, well, if it would have been challenged this or this or that. So we know there are too many vested interests who want access to our kids, but also want access to other resources, that the reason they go after ICWA is because ICWA strongly affirms tribal sovereignty, that there can be no tribe in the future without its citizens. Therefore, children and the welfare of those children are an inherent right and concern of that tribe. So people who want access to, it's never been about the children. They want access to the land and resources, minerals, especially now those rare earth minerals that are going to decide who rules the world. If they can dispose us of our children and dispose us of our title to land and our mineral rights and other rights, then they can access the resources that are underground now, the rare earth minerals. So yeah, I go all scorched earth that it's never been about the welfare of Native children. It's always been about delegitimizing tribal sovereignty.
Well, the main complaint is it's racist, it's racist, it's racist. That if we can't take care of our children, then of course the white savior's got to come in and do what we couldn't. It's a really weird
It is, and it's kind of like a circular logic that doesn't make sense. That Native Americans, many were forced gunpoint to relocate to a reservation, which, let's face it, it wasn't the best of the land that, that the tribe originally had. It was like you're put on the scraps, the land that couldn't support farming or couldn't support, and supposedly was worthless. That was the land where the reservation would be put. And so you have these Native communities, and if you didn't send your kids to boarding school, they could withhold the rations for that reservation. So you have poverty being endemic on reservations. And then you have non-Native social workers and church personnel coming and saying, you're too poor to have children, or each child doesn't have their own bedroom or their own bed. Therefore, this child is being neglected, and we can take them. The child deserves better. And it's like, you don't understand that the forces that landed that child in a poverty-stricken community, that wasn't the parents.
Nope.
That it was systemic. And that's the part that always using middle-class white values, middle-class values to decree that a family, that a child's welfare is in danger. Yeah, that's very high and mighty. And
but they killed food sources. They killed up all the buffalo and said, you can't feed your kids. They stuck you in terrible, isolated places and go, you guys don't have any jobs. Right?
Yeah. Employment, like, yeah, you're located miles from any city or town where you could sustain a business. Unemployment, your kids are at risk. Let's take them. So yeah, there's that whole illogical that ICWA was supposed to, and has, when it's been applied correctly, where court personnel and social service people are being trained about these factors that led to poverty endemic communities, and that's not a basis for removing a child. That says nothing about
continued genocide. It still feels like a quieter war almost. Because like you said, the more children are removed, that means your nation numbers go down. And if you don't teach the children culture, then there's less people going back to support that tribe and culture through things like powwow events, Pine Nut Festival, all the things.
Right.
And so it really does feel like they, and again, coming out of the 60s scoop, they never wanted us to keep our kids, it feels like.
Right. And you see, like, okay, let's be political about
sterilization, right?
Yeah.
So
yes, but let's look at another political situation. Russia taking Ukrainian children and taking them away from their families and putting them in schools, camps, and teaching them how to be proper Russian citizens. And that's no different than the churches that would come around and and scoop up children and turn them into good Christians. So yeah, I mean, our children have always been a resource that our future depends upon. That if you can, what does that say? The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. And so, yeah.
So if I read Sisters, will I be sweating as much as I am right now?
You will have a reaction. I promise a satisfying read. So that, yeah, I promise a satisfying read that you will not regret having read.
So is book 4 kind of in the works too through this trilogy?
Actually, yes, it's a 4-book connected stories. We don't say sequels because, Sisters in the Wind takes place after Firekeepers, my first book, but before Warrior Girl Unearthed, which was my second book. So, my books were written that they could be read in any order, but they are connected. You do see familiar faces from one story to another. And that's just how I like to write. I think it's a very Indigenous way of storytelling. Connected families, connected stories. My first involved element of fire, the second element of earth, the third element of air. And so my fourth, yes, is going to be about the element of water. And in particular, looking at Line 5 pipeline and the man camps that spring up to house the workers. And then we women in Ojibwe teachings, we get our teachings, water teachings. But what happens when the water is toxic? What happens when the water is sick? What does that do to our teachings? What does that do? And so I think the Line 5 pipeline and other pipelines, I think you see that conflict that I hope that makes my fourth book my best ever. So always trying to improve myself as a writer and talking about issues that I feel strongly about.
So an elder told me decades ago that you can tell how a society treats its women by how it treats its water. And that blew my mind open. You look at Europe, colonization, they own women, they just destroy water, right? So that really has shakeneth me. But how are you going to take all these kind of dense political almost, how are the GMA ladies going to react to you talking about ICWA and 60 swoop and boarding schools and paper genocide and the hand that rocks the cradle? How are you going to do this? And I'm going to watch.
Hopefully, I try to tell a story that connects on a lot of different levels. And so, there are the people that are there that will buy the book because they've heard Donis and Jamie are in the book and they can't get enough of Donis and Jamie, who they first met in Firekeeper's Daughter. And so I look forward to people reading the book and wanting to share how they felt about it, whether they loved it or didn't love it. Once it's in the reader's hand, it stops being my book.
Well, yes, because our imaginations and experience and interpretations take over.
Yeah. So, and then too, there's the cynical part of me that is like, once you buy it, I got my royalty. I got my percentage. You can feel however you want about that story. I'm doing good.
As long as the check clears, you can feel whatever you need to.
I'm earning out and I can continue to write stories. So you feel however you want to feel about it. And I'm not here to take it away, take your reaction away from you. You own that. So I think having that kind of perspective is good for an author. So,
and I think that's what a lot of this book banning stuff, like, we don't want to make people feel bad. Well, this stuff happened. You don't have to feel bad. This is what happened.
Right.
And you're not
if you don't know your past, you're going to repeat it. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know. A part of me wants to protect you and be like, listen, GMA ladies, you need to honor and respect and take care of this lady because she's killing it for the rest of us. But I'll be there in spirit doing that. Just the tiger on your back instead of the monkey. So all 3 books are available now.
Yes.
Everything is out and hot off the presses. So where do we get these said books?
You can get them from any bookseller. I encourage people to buy from those, your local independent bookseller. If you're in Sault Ste. Marie, go to Island Books and Crafts and tell Les and Kelly that I said hi. Petoskey, Michigan has a great bookstore, McLean and Eakin. Birch Bark Books in Minneapolis, they have the best selection by Indigenous authors. And you can purchase online from any of the any independent bookseller has a way for you to order online, even if it's just calling up and ordering it and they ship it to you. So yeah, we have to show that our stories are marketable for publishing. It is a business. It's not a nonprofit with a great mission statement. It is a business, and everyone has to show that their stories are marketable to keep getting our stories in print.
But what you do helps, right? Because you are marketable. Somebody took a risk on you and it worked. We're always seen as a risk. We're always seen as what's going to happen. So these don't have to be read in order. You do what you got to do. Now, have you started the tour? I'm all the way in California, but are we going to be able to access you soon and shake your hand and buy your books and get an autograph and be like, oh my gosh, you're so great to your face?
I'm sure I will be out in California at some point. Okay. Last week I was in Green Bay. The day that my book came out, it came out September 2nd. So it was that Tuesday after Memorial Day. And I got to launch that book at Oneida Nation High School near Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so to be in, a room full of the students from that high school talking about my book and answering their questions, it was wonderful. And then, yes, there was doing book events in Green Bay and Minneapolis and Portland, Vancouver, Winnipeg. That's where I was last week. And then next week I'll be in Philadelphia and then New York City. And, hopefully I love traveling. I love meeting readers. And so,
so is that like on social medias, or is the schedule on your website, or, where's the best way for us to stalk you without stalking you?
Sure. So usually my my social media, I've got where I'll be, and then on my author website, which you can access either angelineboulley.com or firekeepersdaughter.com. There's a way that you can request to have me come to, your community. I do paid speaking engagements. I also do sometimes a free virtual pop in. If a class has studied my book, I like to pop into that class Zoom in after students have finished reading the book so we can have a very in-depth conversation about it. I can't accommodate every request, but if it's a request from a school with a significant Native population, I definitely try to be visible for that.
And then explain again, because I don't think people realize you can go into your public library and request a book and they will buy it and stock it.
Right. The author doesn't miss out on sales when you check out a book for free from your public library. The library purchases and they get a certain number of checkouts of that book, whether it's the actual hardcover book or whether it's through an ebook service, even audio that you can get through your public library. We are compensated based on use, based on downloads, based on, so it's not just the book purchase, but it's the actual book utilization that benefits us.
No, I have to hold paper books. I can't read.
I'm the same.
Same thing with CDs and records. I need to touch and.
I do too, but I'm in my car an awful lot, and I'm the daughter of a truck driver. And so we've been listening to books on tape since they were on cassette tapes. So I always have an audiobook going while I drive.
That's awesome. Yeah, my mom was a big commuter here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So she was doing the cassette books on cassette tape. And then she'd be in the car listening, and then something would get steamy, and then we weren't listening anymore. So she's like,
I know.
I didn't know this was happening. Eject, eject.
And I love books that I think of books as friends, and sometimes you want to revisit that friend. So I'd be, listening to a murder mystery in the car, headed somewhere with the kids, and my daughter would be like, "Wait, we already listened to this one. I know who killed so and so," and I would be like, "But don't you want to revisit that friend?" And she was like, "But I know how the mystery is solved," and it just cracks me up, just how people take in a story differently. My daughter has no interest in rereading a book. She wants new content. But for me, books are familiar friends, and sometimes you just want, you're going to feel a certain cozy way from a certain cozy friend, and that's what you need. So I
Yeah,
say
you enjoy the ride.
stories are medicine. Stories are medicine, and sometimes that prescription is for that heartwarming, cozy, and other times it's the steamy, you know, erotic thriller. That yeah, I would be more careful with my kids in the car, but
I don't think she knew it was coming.
yeah.
It's what I like to tell myself. But I had, Johnny Moses, Pacific Northwest storyteller. He was taught that we have to listen to stories at least 4 times because we're growing and we're aging and it's different. So you hear a story as a kid and it goes over your head or you don't absorb it. You hear it again, maybe as a teenager. It's, so I don't think storytelling is necessarily a one and done thing because we change, we grow, we evolve, we hear things, so
I'll
I
tell my
say,
daughter that. That's a compelling argument for the reread. I think that also explains why. I read V.C. Andrews and Stephen King probably far earlier than I should have, but when I reread Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews, and I was like, I don't remember half of this raunchy stuff that happened. Like, I don't I think that our brains do protect us. And so that's why, like, when you watch a children's cartoon with your kids and you're getting all of this content that they're not picking up on it. They're just,
just
watching
innuendo.
SpongeBob or whatever. And the adult is like, oh, wow, they really went there with that. I think that's the same way with books. If a child isn't ready, you know what? They're going to be bored by the book. They're not going to want to finish it. Or the story that they read is, it has been filtered, and what their brain receives is different than the story. When they read it again, 20 years later, just like no river is the same river twice. No book is the same book twice. You're different. Therefore, the perspective that you're
Yep.
bringing to the book and, what gets filtered and what sticks, that is different.
Yeah. See, so once I heard that, I thought about we have, I don't know, I remember being 8, 10 years old and just feeling like I got it all figured out. Look how smart I am. Right. So I kind of do want to explore, especially too, being an adult. Will grapes of wrath hit different? Will that poverty and the strife and the or the Angela's ashes being an adult now? I don't know. So let's go do some rereading together.
Exactly.
Now, autograph copies, is that stuff we can get off your website? I don't know why. I just
Yes.
keep trying to.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want just a generic book. I need a book that you graffitied for me. It's not going to hit the same.
There are autographed copies that are at different booksellers.
Okay.
I think I signed almost 5,000 tip-in sheets for when the books were being printed, and those were going, I believe, to independent booksellers. So they're there. And then also on my author website, angelineboulley.com or firekeepersdaughter.com, there's an online form you can fill out if you would like a signed book plate that you can then put in your book. And if you want it personalized, if you want to gift a book to someone and you want me to, Dear Jennifer, happy reading, and from Angeline Boulley, definitely.
Wait, you customize it? So if I get one for my niece, says don't
Oh
be an
yeah.
idiot, don't be an idiot when you grow up. Love
Yeah.
Angeline.
Yeah. I can't say every inscription will be exact. Like, come on, I'm not gonna, I have some discretion there, but no, it's free. It's
That's
you just
sweet.
fill out the form with the information and provide a mailing address, and I sit down while I'm, drinking a glass of wine and watching,
Listen, the way your career is
Bridgerton or
going,
something.
this may be the last round of us having access to you because all these
Oh,
bestsellers, a fourth one coming at some point, we're going to be calling somebody to call somebody to ask somebody to call you. So we're going to enjoy this straight shot while we got it.
well, I appreciate it, but I'm always reachable through my author website and
Yes.
less so on social media, but my author website. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the least I can do. You might not be able to travel to a book event or see me on tour, but I'm happy to ship a signed book plate to you in the mail. It's, yeah.
But educators, they can reach out the same way through your website for any of your school events or things like that. Like
Yes.
that's the hub for harassment.
Yeah. And I'll take it on. Yeah. And I'm
Well,
also going to be talking about, books by other authors.
which is sweet too, because most people it's an ego game. Me, only me can survive me.
There is that like zero sum game that where you feel like if your slice of the pie gets bigger, other people's get smaller. But I counter that with a rising tide lifts all boats. People that maybe my book is the first book they've ever read by a Native author, but if they like it, they're going to read more books. And every time I speak, I'm going to advocate for, you know, Byron Graves, Resball, David Robertson. There's just so many. And Dr. Debbie Reese's blog, that American Indians in Children's Literature, her and Dr. Jean Mendoza, they put out a best of list each year, the best
Ooh.
by Native authors, the best picture books, the best chapter books, middle grade, young adult, graphic novel, adult novels, and nonfiction. And they do the vetting. Like if someone claims they're from a particular community, they do the checking to make sure that community claims them back. And if they don't recommend a book, there's always a very thoughtful review of what factors went into not reviewing or not recommending a book. So, and I love that resource. It's free. And I worry about teachers being so afraid of getting it wrong that they decide not to
Even
select
try.
any
Yeah.
Native story. And erasure is as bad as uh, misrepresentation. And so free resources like that, Debbie Reese's blog and Ojibwe.net and, other resources that are talking about great books that are out there. Yeah, there's no reason to not have this, the latest, greatest book by the newest Native author.
But it just feeds into that tokenism. Oh, we already have one. We already acknowledged a Native this year, so we don't need to do it anymore.
Right.
Yes, it's that weird thing. Well, I so appreciate you spending this time with us, and a huge congratulations for just waking up a bestseller. I saw that there is like so many pre-sales or whatever
yes.
that it just hit bestseller before it even hit the shelves.
Well, that's your first week that the book is published. all of your pre-sales count towards that. So your debut week really is your best week to hit, the bestseller lists. And so I'm very proud that Sisters in the Wind is #1 indie on the indie booksellers list, and it debuted at #7 on the New York Times bestseller list. I found out last night. So yeah.
How did you sleep? I wouldn't have been able to sleep. That's huge.
I was very happy. I probably was grinning throughout my sleep.
Snoring and smiling. It's perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I look forward to #4. Bug us at any time. Please let us know when all your books get turned into a movie or a Netflix series or whatever's next. You got us as a you don't even have to ask.
Will.
You can just tell me, hey, I need the podcast for a few minutes, and it's all yours.
Wonderful. Miigwech.
Well, Yakoke Cheeto, Angeline Boulley, we got your ticker tape with your website. New book is out, right? They can Barnes and Nobles it. They can close their computers right now and run to the bookstore.
Yep. Libro FM is another way that they can do an audiobook that it's like buying it from your local independent bookseller.
Okay.
And then also public library, use them. If we tried to get public libraries established today, there would be so many people opposed to, a free place where where anyone can come in off the street and they don't have to be a consumer. They don't have to buy anything. They can simply exist there and receive. That model wouldn't work today. So let's support our libraries too.
I trust the library more than ChatGPT. If I'm going to research something, I still am old school rules and prefer to go to my library and not just trust something that some blind face said on the internet. There's
right. I spoke recently to a group of teachers and librarians, and they said something about library funding. And I said, hey, I think in every public school, every public university, the library should be as equally supported as the athletics program. And, all applause. I said, because when the shit goes down, who's going to have your back? The athletic director or the librarian? No, we know librarians are the superheroes.
When it goes down, there's a library with books on how do we power, how do we clean water, how do we this, how do we there's limitless survival resources in that. Well, I don't know. My nerd is showing and I like it.
I love it too.
Well, it's just so great meeting you. Thank you, Shannon, for connecting us. And I look forward to #4, 5, 6, and how many did the Babysitters Club do? Can you beat there? What was it, like 90 something books?
Oh my goodness. Just let's focus on Sisters in the Wind.
and then we'll get to #74 when we get there.
Right.
All right. Well, I so appreciate you. Have a wonderful day, and tell that cat, sorry, I was working.
Mama P.
All right, Annie Taker. Thank you so much. Well, hot dog, you guys. I'm shocked. I had no idea what to expect because I don't know. I always get scared with educated literary minds because sometimes I feel like such a goofball idiot that how am I going to run with the big dogs? But she was so sweet and I'm so grateful. So until next month, when we hop back into the hoop, I'm Jennifer Robin for Red Hoop Talk. All right, Cheapies la chique. And we'll end it with the now.